Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jordan if you are new here, and today in honor of February I am going to share my top romance recommendations. I do have a few different variations of this video that I will be putting out in February, but this first one is just like a general romance. It doesn't have any specific tropes that would be like easier to categorize, and some of them on this list are like definitely more clean romance, so I'll specify those ones for people who are looking for the clean stuff. And some of them are like fantasy books that I've read that have the absolute best romance in them, so I will also specify when it's one of those. But anyways, these are books that I have read. Some of them I read so long ago that I'm even gonna have to look up the synopsis for, because I'm just gonna be completely transparent with you guys. Whether it's a movie or a book, I always remember how I felt about it. Like, I can tell you I loved that or I hated that, but oftentimes I cannot tell you who the characters were or what actually happened. I just remember like whether or not I liked it. And I'm just so excited. So let's jump right into this. First up, I have to tell you guys about the Baxter family series. There are so many books in this series. They're written by Karen Kingsbury, which she is a Christian author. Now, before you run because I just said Christian, I want you to know that I feel like no matter what you believe, there are some great Christian romance authors that don't shove beliefs down your throat, because I know some people just are not interested in that, but they do give you a very, very good dramatic, romantic story that's just more clean. And I know, because I've had conversations with some of you, that we're all looking sometimes for like a cleaner romance. And so Karen Kingsbury, the Baxter family series, is top tier for me. I devoured this whole series and there's like 25 books in it. The audiobooks are great. The physical books are great. You start with one series, which you would begin with the Remember series, and then that series has like 4 or 5 books, and then you roll over into the next series which has 4 or 5 books, and it's just this continuation of this family drama. But the romance in this is so good because everyone is kind of like finding love, and each series is a different person's love story. It's just so great and so clean, but like so gripping, that I can't recommend this series enough. It can get a little confusing where to begin, where to read these, so I will link below Karen Kingsbury's website where she tells you the order to read these books in. Another one that is Christian fiction, but guys, this book is so incredible. Like, there is nothing like it on the market. One of the most beautiful stories I've ever read. It is probably like my second favorite book of all time, and that is Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. This one was trending pretty hard in 2022 because the movie came out, which the movie is amazing, okay? But I do recommend you read the book first. This is such an emotional and beautiful love story about this girl who is caught up in like a certain industry, but this guy comes and falls for her and tries to get her out of it. She is like very conflicted and going back and forth, feels very unworthy. It really is one of the most beautiful love stories ever, because this guy just never gives up on her, but it is overall a very clean story. Another author that you can always count on her stories being very clean is Catherine Center. I discovered her last year and I read 3 of her books over the course of the year, and I loved all of them. The 2 that I'm going to mention in this particular video is Things You Save in a Fire and The Bodyguard. Things You Save in a Fire is such a good story. It is my favorite by Catherine Center so far. I'm gonna read all of them, but it is my favorite. So this girl is a female firefighter, and it just follows her story. For reasons I'm not gonna spoil, she has to go back home and she has to join this new fire station and leave everything she was already established with, and she kind of is vibing with this rookie firefighter, but that's of course frowned upon because, you know, they work in the same station. But there's so much depth to this story, and that's one thing I love about Catherine Center, is her romance is great, her banter is great, but her plot lines always carry a little bit more depth to them rather than like just a romance story. There's something else you're getting out of the book. And so that is one thing I just really love about Catherine Center's writing. And I cannot recommend Things You Save in a Fire enough. Like, literally, I recommend it to everyone. Last year she also came out with The Bodyguard, and this one was so fun. It also had a deep plot to it, but was definitely, in my opinion, her more like fun and lighthearted romance book. This girl, she works as a bodyguard, obviously, and she has to work for and over this famous guy, and it was such a unique story, and I just know that it put a smile on so many people's faces last year. So definitely a good romance for you to grab and read in February. One book that I do not see like anyone talking about, I don't know why this one hasn't blown up a little bit more, and that is The Last Letter. I read this one several years ago, and it's one that like the plotline actually stuck with me, which is saying a lot. It's basically this story of this guy who comes home from the military, and his best friend asked him to look out for his sister, and his sister is a single mom, and it was just this most endearing story of him not really telling her why he's around, but he's there and he's looking out for her, and her kids are so stinking adorable. I love when children are written well into a plot line, and I just loved this book. I will say that the ending is going to utterly destroy you. It definitely has a trope of grief in it, for sure, so tread lightly if that is something that will really bother you, but I need more people to read this book. Like, please, can we get this book trending, because it's so good. Another one that I've like seen hardly anyone ever talk about, it's several years old, I read it several years ago, and that is Cancel the Wedding. When I was looking through my Goodreads to just see like what romance to recommend you guys, this one like screamed at me. I loved this book so much. I need to reread it, honestly, because it has been a few years and I've read a lot of books since then, but I do remember loving this one. It's about this girl who basically cancels her whole wedding, leaves, I don't remember if she left like the day of, and then retreats to this small town. And I know that's a trope we've all heard before, but there was a lot more depth to this one. Of course there's a love interest there, and I just remember she's like finding out things about her family, and it was a really good story. And so if you like a little bit more drama and plot to your romance, this is a great option. Of course, one that we've probably all heard about is Taylor Jenkins Reid, One True Loves. This is probably one of the first romance books I ever read, and I loved it. It did start trending again pretty hard last year in 2022, and for good reason, because this book is again just another really unique story. This girl is getting engaged, or she is engaged, and her husband had passed away. But then all of a sudden, her husband shows back up and is like, by the way, I didn't die on that mission. I've been living on an island, and here I am again. And so this poor girl has to navigate, like, who do you love? Do you have just one true love? It was so good and so unique, and definitely one that I think a lot of people enjoy. And like I said, it's for very good reason. So if you haven't tried that one yet, I definitely recommend it. I cannot have a romance recommendation video without talking about Colleen Hoover, Coho. I know that people are very, like, either for her or against her. They love her books or they hate her books. I stand a little bit more on the side of liking her books. I have not liked all of them. Some of her books are so problematic, but I have liked most of them. And two of them that are very honorable mentions for me would be Reminders of Him. This one came out in 2022 and I am obsessed. The male in this book is one of my favorite male written characters ever, and this one is about this mom that, for reasons I don't want to spoil, she goes to jail, so her daughter gets given to the grandparents. She shows back up because it was kind of all a misunderstanding and she just wants to be in her daughter's life, and so there's this huge plot of like a beautiful story of this mom that just wants to be with her daughter. But On the other side of it all, there is also a romance where this guy is trying to help her, but he also is close to the grandparents and the little girl, and so it's this whole navigating of forgiveness and love. The story really just moved me more than just for the romance sake. It was just a really good overall plot that I loved. And another Coho book that I gave 5 stars to was All Your Perfects, and I don't even remember what it's about, but I gave it 5 stars. So I need to reread it, obviously, because I don't give out 5 stars lightly. So I'm gonna just tell you quickly the synopsis, because again, I don't remember what this one was about other than that it involved a marriage. Quinn and Graham's perfect love is threatened by their imperfect marriage. Memories, mistakes, secrets they've built up over the years are now tearing them apart, and the one thing that could save them might also be the very thing that pushes their marriage beyond the point of repair. It's a heartbreaking page-turner that asks, can a resounding love with a perfect beginning survive a lifetime between 2 imperfect people? Guys, I still, even after reading the synopsis, I'm like, I don't remember reading that book. But like I said, I gave it 5 stars, so naturally I'm gonna recommend it, and I will probably be rereading it again soon too. A romance that I recently read, and if you've been here long enough, you've heard me literally raving about this book, and that is Binding and Keeping 13. Literally, like, new favorite books. So Binding 13 was probably just like a 4-star for me, but you have to read it to get to Keeping 13, which is where the real gold is at. There's a lot of themes in this book that are not for everyone. There's domestic violence, there's bullying, it is R-rated with the language between all these rugby players and high school kids, and there is like some more mature sexual content. I wouldn't say that it's like R-rated sexual content, but it is a little bit more mature, so it's not for everyone. But I love these books, and I cannot have a video like this without recommending them, because I personally was so emotionally gripped by this story and these characters. If you like a romance that is going to have you in an actual emotional chokehold, and you love lots of drama that is going to break your heart, then please read these books. These are for you. If that is you, this is literally written for you, and you need to read them. Of course, I have to mention To All the Boys I've Loved Before, because this series is so stinking cute. I devoured this series when I started it. I read it just back to back and loved every second of it. If you don't know, you can read the series, and the movies are out now too, so I love that when you've got the movie adaptation. If you're new to a series, like, you get to just read and watch all at the same time. That is a complete life. But this series was just so fun. I adored these characters. I was so invested to see, like, are they gonna end up together, and what does their future hold? It was just a really enjoyable, more YA easy type of romance story that is definitely on the more clean side. And the last few books that I'm going to mention are fantasy books that I think have some of the absolute best romance in them. I didn't go through a ton of fantasy, I just kind of picked the ones that really stand out to me. And one of those is the Selection series. This one, like, is borderline fantasy. It's definitely a Regency era Hunger Games style story, but it's not so far-fetched that it's like a complete fantasy world. I have been wanting to reread this series for so long because I absolutely loved this series, and the love in it, the romance in it is so top-notch and twisty-turny and just tugs on your heartstrings, and it's kind of got that love triangle aspect to it, but it's got the Regency and royalty to it. For a like YA fantasy series, it is so good. Like, I am a grown woman and I love it. And then of course you've got Sarah J Maas, who is like the queen of fantasy and romance within her fantasy, with the Throne of Glass series and the ACOTAR series. Both of them have such good romantic love interests and relationships going on. Not even just whoever the main characters are, but the side characters all have really good romance building, and she just writes the best couples. And so if you have not tried Throne of Glass and ACOTAR yet, like, what are you waiting for? you need to do yourself a favor and go read both of these series. Another fantasy series that I really enjoyed the love interest in was Shatter Me. This is a longer series. It's very YA. It reminds me a lot of like X-Men or something. It gives me those vibes, plus has like a lot of sci-fi elements to it, but the love in this one is definitely one that's so angsty and leaves you on the edge of your seat, and you're just like rooting for them and your heart is in pieces, and it's just so good. This is a series that I don't think everyone would enjoy, but if those things that I mentioned are your type of thing, that you enjoy that more YA feel with the like sci-fi elements and magical abilities within the characters, then definitely try that series. And the last book on this list is These Hollow Vows and These Twisted Bonds. This series won my heart, especially if you've read ACOTAR and did love ACOTAR, then you must try this series. This does have that love triangle aspect to it, but it's very well written, and I just like, more than even the world building and the plot, I was totally invested in this love interest and like what is gonna happen here, how are they gonna come together, which guy do I even want her with, is how I felt for a little while, but then it comes full circle and you just know who you're cheering for, and it is just so well written and so good. I think they're classified as young adult, but I do know in book 1 and book 2 there's a pretty steamy scene, so just be warned that yes, there is like one intimate scene in both book 1 and book 2. So that is a wrap. Like I said, I'm gonna have a couple more of these style sit down videos for you guys in February where I recommend books that have a little bit more specific tropes to them. So I'm really excited to continue talking about all the romance books in February. I'd love to hear below what some of your favorite romance books are. And if you have nothing else to say, just say hi or drop the heart emoji. I really appreciate when you guys just like say hey and let me know you're here, because otherwise I feel like I'm talking to a wall. And if you haven't already, please consider hitting the subscribe button and sticking around, and I will see you guys in my next video.
I see forever in